The plan for this video and the subsequent 7 or 8 that will come with it is to make an arm harness like this one found in the Churburg Museum. I'll put some proper pictures up of it later. I'm not making an exact copy of this. I'm just going to use this as a point of inspiration for these videos and see where we end up at the end of it. So what I'm doing at the moment is making a pattern for the elbow, or the couter. I just wanted to say a couple of things about patterns that I've learned over the years. Is firstly, don't become a slave to them. I wouldn't make all of the lames, rear brace and van brace parts from this. Do a reasonable enough job of the first part and then take your measurements and other bits and pieces from that, and you'll save yourself an awful lot of time. At least that's been my experience so far. I used to spend a lot of time trying to get both sides to marry up precisely. And then somebody showed me that just build half of it, fold it in half and draw around it, and you'll get an exact copy. Otherwise you can waste forever doing this. I've started the pattern off. This pen mark there is just because I got a bit sloppy in amongst all this trying to copy the shape of the pattern of the arm harness that you saw earlier. It's a little bit flatter along here than I'd done previously. So all I'm going to do is I'm pretty much ready. I'm going to mark where I want the wing to go. I'll look at the picture and mark that up on the top half, and then I'll just fold it in half there and make a copy when I cut it out. So what I'm doing here is just a quick comparison with the image that I've got here from the internet. Got a few of the arm harness so I can make sure I'm staying on track. And I'm just interested in the wing at the moment, and I can see, looking at this picture, where these points in size up here and cut the edge of the wing, and they're just slightly above where the wing comes down and folds into the couter here. So we take that as a point and then just come up a bit. I'm not planning on making a facsimile of this arm harness, which is why I'm not too bothered about making sure I get everything exactly right. I'm using it as an inspiration. If I was looking to make a facsimile of this, then you need to get yourself down to the museum, you measure everything and so on. I'm just using it for proportion and general look. So I'm happy with that mark there. And then I can see, if I take this point here, we just come into about here. That'll be where the strap goes. And just forward of that position there is the point for that. And there we go, we're done. So here we are. I've got most of the pattern cut for the couter, for the elbow. As strange as it looks at the moment, we're just about there. What I've done is I'm happy with this arc here and the shape of it all down here, and I want to replicate that on that side. Rather than draw lots of lines and measure everything out, just simply fold it in half, make sure it's nice and flat, and draw around. And remember, when you cut to the inside of that line you've just put, and then you'll have an exact copy of the wing. Now, for my cutting, I use these pretty much exclusively for the big parts. If I've got a largish pattern, I might use a grinder just to get it away from the metal, make it a bit more serviceable and manageable. I forget how much these cost. They're not exactly cheap. They're a bit like the throatless shear. I hear people talk about the Beverly shear all the time. They're basically an electric version of a throatless shear. The thing I like about the MacLeod ones in particular, although others do have it, is you have a block and the head and the anvil shape here, and you can just take that out and turn it through 90 degrees if it starts to get a bit dull, and you can buy replacements for these. But I've used this week in, week out now for probably about 4 or 5 years, and I've only just recently turned the face of the cutter and the head here. You can see where it just starts to get a bit blunt. You get a burr on the material, so you just turn it through 90 degrees and you're away again. Very straightforward. There are plenty of other companies out there that make cutters like this. I've just liked Makita tools, and the stockist up the road supplies Makita quite cheaply. I've had Bosch in the past, a lighter version which broke, but they were given to me by another armourer, Russ Thomas, and they work just fine. So I'll go for these, but I will be doing a full product review of these sorts of things later on. So I've got the patterns cut. What I've done is I've marked where I want the wings details to be going, and I've just scratched it in with this scribe just so I can see it if we use heat later and just don't lose my way and you get a much more accurate line. What I'm going to do now is take them across the anvil and just flatten them down a touch, and then we'll move on. These corners here that I've marked can become full of stresses and crack later, particularly in a high carbon steel. This is just 16 gauge mild. So what I've done is I've left this sweep on the material to alleviate the strain and stress on these corners. What I'm going to do now is just flatten this piece out where it got a bit twisted while I was cutting, and then we'll get onto the wing. So when I make elbows or knees and they have a wing on, I always tend to start with the wing first. This is because later, when you've bent the bowl and the shape of the couter or the polling, it's very difficult to get in here and make the shape. So what I've got is a hammer that I picked up from a car boot sale, and all I've done is I've ground it a bit round on that profile, on that way only, and that way it's still square. What this lets me do is line up my line here on a relatively sharp but rounded edge on the anvil, and just get that movement started into this piece, the downward movement. Don't worry too much about the middle. If you start heading there, you'll twist it. So I'm just starting it off here on this edge, just trying to keep that straight on there. It doesn't matter if it goes awry. Try to avoid smashing into there because you'll weaken the material against the sharpness of the anvil. And just don't worry about the corner too much. We'll get to that towards the end. So you can start to see I'm moving it down. Repeat again on the other side. Now you see the wing itself is starting to twist, so always stay on top of that just by giving it a couple of taps back down. And then work this middle piece again for a few moments. Again, get that twist out. We've gone there about as well as we can. Now what I want to do is sharpen down this edge a touch. So I want to work this edge down now, and because it's a bit bent here, I'm just going to work on the end of the anvil here. I'll feel line up straight along this edge. You're working straight down on the piece of work, not coming in on this angle and damaging it using the anvil edge like a chisel. Just using it as a form instead. Just tap it down. And the same again the other side. All we're doing here is starting to show the metal where we want it to go, and we're strengthening this edge. Make it sharp and nice later. Happy with that? Just turn it over, work this bit back down. Just stay on top of that twist, make sure it doesn't get away from you. You can see it's starting to take on a relatively nice shape. Now, the original isn't that aggressive in this distance. If you look at it, I'll put a picture up. You should see one appear shortly, hopefully, if I've learnt my editing software. But it's not that aggressive here. It's not like a later 15th century piece where it's right over here. That sort of movement is still in its infancy. So this is just about half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch at its maximum in this middle place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some heat just here, and we're going to push that down a little more aggressively, and we're going to try and keep the heat just in this area so that this can't bend, which is one of the reasons I've strengthened these lines now, because it will stop this from bending. I'm just going to tidy this one up a little bit here, but it will stop that from trying to curve. That sort of movement hasn't yet begun on the armour. Okay, so we apply a gentle heat to the middle, get it supported on the anvil, give it a couple of taps. On the other side. we're just about there. Give it a straighten off. I'm going to tap down. And again. Try not to drop it, that's not obligatory. You can see we're just about there. Maybe a touch more just on the tip there. And that's about that. Just give it a touch down in that middle point. And then we'll put our crease in there in just a moment. So we've pushed that down, I've cooled it down in the water now, and what I've done is I've marked where I want the line to go on the back piece. So what I do is I get that line onto the anvil edge, nice broad hammer, and just touch it down. Again, try not to use this as a chisel, just push it over. And then when you need to, swap and try again on the other side. Get it all down nice and flat. Before you go too far, just check it looks square on this side. Sometimes a bit of armour can look square on one side and not on the other, but this is the view that most people will have. So check it's square on there. It's looking okay. And then just continue to walk it down. Get right into the corner here with that crease. Same again on this side. And when you need to, on the back here, get it touched down. Walk it along gently. Gently going along here, soliding up, firming up that crease. Remember, when we look at the original, that line is straight. It does not curve like that. Some armour, you see that, some later armours, but at the moment that is just a straight line in that piece. So keep it nice and tight. Work right down into the corner. Top piece again, down into that corner. Always keep this on line with your anvil, sighting along the length of the anvil edge, so you don't lose where you are and wander off. A few hits, check you're okay, continue. There we go. Pretty much the roughing out of that wing is finished to go with its other half here. Still lots to do in here, but that is how you push in those corners nice and easy. So in the next one we'll look about finishing off the shape and roughing out of the wing, and then we'll move into the actual couter itself and how we can dish it from the inside, raise it from the outside, or better still use a combination of the both, and we'll move it on from there in the next video.